from Westminster. A very good morning to you, Catherine. Thank you so much for joining us. What's the latest in terms of support for Theresa May for the Brexit deal?
Well, at the moment, we're here in Parliament. As you can see, a very cold morning, and Theresa May must be getting up in Downing Street and wondering just how big the defeat that faces her will be. Everyone is widely expected that she will be defeated, that her withdrawal legislation will be defeated. The key question will be the size of the defeat. Now, some estimates put it at around up to 200, and obviously you'd have to go back to 1924 to see a defeat of that size. That will be historic, but we are really getting to the Brexit endgame now, and that vote, as you mentioned, the debate, last day of the debate today, will get underway in a few hours' time, and we should see that vote sometime in the evening, probably around 8 o'clock UK time.
The European Union has already worked on processes. An exit date has been set. How does a vote either way influence how the EU will respond to Britain going forward?
Well, let's assume that Theresa May does lose this vote, which is widely anticipated. People are saying it would take a miracle now for it to pass some sort of last-minute amendment or last-minute intervention by the EU. That is not expected. So if this if this withdrawal act is voted down, basically Theresa May has 3 days to come back to the House with a plan B. But this will also spark debate over in Brussels, because for the first time they will see the lay of the land. They will see how British lawmakers are receiving this Brexit deal, which, as you mentioned, has been agreed by all 27, and it will be the first time that they may have to reckon with what will come next, because for so long the EU have had a very joined position, a very united front, saying this is the deal, it cannot be renegotiated. So we'll have to see how Brussels reacts. There's all sorts of things at play. We could, of course, when we expect this defeat to come, Theresa May will possibly face a vote of no confidence in her government tabled by the Labour Party. MPs are working on amendments to try to change this legislation. So lots of moving parts in this, but we are obviously, how Brussels responds will be crucial.
A lot has been said about the Irish backstop, which is essentially an insurance policy in these negotiations. But just give us the backstory. How does the Irish backstop feature, or this aspect of the negotiations? What is it all about?
Yeah, it's very complex, and I think if you ask the average British person, they perhaps wouldn't be able to tell you. But people, the main source of the opposition to this deal surrounds this backstop, which is basically a way to avoid putting a hard border between Ireland, which belongs to the European Union, and Northern Ireland, which of course is part of the UK. Neither side wants to see a return to a physical border. At the moment, goods and people travel freely between the two countries. However, if the UK, when it is planning to leave the European Union, it will no longer be a member of the customs union. So goods will have to be checked, and that would require a physical border. So in order to avoid that, they have a backstop measure, which would come into force if the two sides have failed to reach a free trade agreement. Now, free trade agreements take years to negotiate, and nobody expects that to be completed by the end of 2020, which is the time frame. So if that didn't happen, the insurance measure to avoid this physical border would be the backstop measure. But Northern Ireland politicians up in arms about this. And let's not forget that the DUP supports the government of Theresa May. They say they fought a terrorist war to keep Northern Ireland part of Britain, of course, in the 70s and the 80s, facing the IRA. They say they are not going to be dictated to from Brussels to be kept apart. So it's complicated, and it refers to the customs agreement, but basically it's very crucial and a huge part of why this Theresa May's withdrawal agreement lacks support.
Catherine, let's backtrack a bit here. A South African viewer watching and thinking, but the British wanted to get out, leave this formation of the European Union. At what point did they decide that maybe they didn't want to do so that much?
Well, opinion polls vary, of course. They go up and down. But at the moment, it does seem that people who want to remain within the European Union are outweigh the number of people who want to stay. Some people have changed their minds in both cases, of course. So it is a fluid situation. What many people who are trying to thwart this Brexit process would say is that the people who campaigned for the country to vote leave basically sold a lot of promises, a lot of that they would have additional money for the NHS, for services, and that it would all be plain sailing. And of course the reality of that has come into force. We can see that it's extremely complex. Some people have compared it to trying to take an egg out of an omelette when it is already cooked. Of course, these trade agreements, these trade arrangements have been in place for 40 years. So it is hugely complex. In the interest of fairness, I should say that those who campaign to remain have also been criticised for not telling the truth and for misleading people. So accusations on both sides, and it is a changing picture. That, of course, was 2 years ago, that referendum. So growing calls for a second referendum now that the terms of how we would exit have become clearer.
Those developments and challenges that you're talking about, will they be reversed should tonight's vote not succeed?
No, should tonight's vote not succeed, basically all options are on the table. We could be facing a general election. That is what the Labour Party, led by Jeremy Corbyn, want to push for. It's not clear how that will play out, whether we will have a general election. Theresa May will likely have to go back to Brussels, and some believe she may have more leverage then. She can say, look, the MPs have overwhelmingly voted this deal. Let's take another look at this deal. Let's take another look at this backstop. Some discussion about whether they could put an expiry date on the backstop so that it does expire at some point, because the big fear is that if the UK and Northern Ireland falls into this backstop arrangement, then there's no ability to get out of it without the agreement of the European Union. So then we would basically see the end game of Brexit. We have many MPs in the House who, the MPs overwhelmingly are in favour of remaining part of the European Union. They may push for a softer Brexit, so staying more closely aligned with the European Union. So those hard Brexiteers are fearful that there could be no Brexit at all. So basically all options will be in play should Theresa May's withdrawal agreement be voted down tonight.
Catherine, we speak a lot about the processes of Brexit in the two houses and in Brussels, but give us a sense of life on the ground in the UK as these machinations continue. How are the Brits feeling about these Brexit conversations?
Well, I mean, the country is deeply and sharply divided, and you don't find many people who don't have strong feelings about it. Many people still believe that that Britain will be better off outside the European Union, and that basically our negotiations with the European Union in the past couple of years has shown that to be the case, that the Europeans can't be trusted, and that they are going to basically, want to get hold of the banking and our manufacturing. Then again, we're 2 years on from the referendum, and many people who couldn't vote last time, many 16-year-olds, many of the younger generation, the under 35-year-olds are predominantly Remainers. They want to stay part of the European Union, and they've become more vocal, more pressure groups, more activism on the street, and we are expecting protests later today. So this is an issue which deeply divides people across classes, across generational divides. Both Conservative and the Labour parties are deeply divided over this issue, and their supporters. So it's difficult to say that there's no clear cut on this, and people continue to argue over Brexit.
Thank you so much. Just to wrap it up, give us the details. What time does the vote start?
Well, it's not quite clear. The debate will start to begin. The last day of parliamentary debate on this legislation will begin in the next few hours. Theresa May is due to wrap up that debate round about 7 o'clock, but it depends how voting goes on various amendments. So the vote is expected between 8 and 9 local times. We are 2 hours behind South Africa.
Thank you so much for that update, Catherine Drew. We'll be taking a look at sport when we come back from this break.